Right, so what's good, guys? Hope everyone's having a good day. It's another sunny day in London today. The weather's been crazy. Um, that's not what I'm here to talk to you about. I'm here to talk to you about history a little bit. Yeah, history is what I want to talk. See, I read a lot of history books, and I watch a lot of historical documentary, especially as it's to do with British history, because that's where I live. So it's only natural that I want to be informed. So I could pass that information on to people like my 10-year-old boy who, needs to know this sort of information. And if you don't know your history, who are you? You need to know your history. That's important. Very, very important. Need to know where you've come from. And the history your people or you've played as humans in the building of our society we live in today. So I read a lot of historical British or history books, British history books. Want of a better word, and it's a lot of times I read these books and I'm sort of frustrated, because a lot of these books neglect the part that the murky part, and for obvious reasons, that Africans played in the building of this country. And I always ask myself why, but I sort of know the answer. It's a murky, dirty history, but we neglected it. It's deliberately left out of most historical books or historical documentaries that you see or read. And, for us to be, I think togetherness, unity, togetherness plays a massive part in the building of any country. This stuff about you're better than me because of the melanin of my skin versus yours is just nonsense. I hate it. I absolutely hate it. It's so wrong. It will never ever be right to me. I love everyone, But, go back to why I decided to make this video. Why neglect the history that Africans played in the building of this country? Now, when we talk about African history or black history, the first thing that comes to most people's mind is slavery. There is a lot more to our history. There's a lot more to black history than slavery. Anyway, I think that, when you talk about slavery, especially African Caribbean slavery, because a lot of what we seem to consume is African American slavery. But to every 12 slave that was transported to the Caribbean during the transatlantic slave trade, for every 12 slave that was sent to the Caribbean, one was sent to America. So that you can see how prevalent it was in the Caribbean as opposed to America. And that's not trying to undermine what's happening in America. It's just as bad, but 12-1 is a massive difference. And the part they played in building this country, Europe in general, but the UK and everywhere else, is massive. You cannot deny that historical fact. Slavery was eventually abolished in the 1830s. I believe it was 1837. That's transatlantic slavery from Africa to the UK. That was abolished in the 1830s. The slaves were compensated because they kicked up a fuss. The slave owners were compensated for kicking up a fuss with Parliament here in the UK. Because all of a sudden, they've abolished slavery, and the slave owners now have no means of making income. You've taken away their means of living. Which is slavery. It's astonishing to think, right? So these guys, basically, in a nutshell, sued the government for the abolishment of the slave trade. For abolishing the slave trade, they sued the government. It's astonishing. And they were compensated. They won. 45,000 slave owners in the UK. 45,000. They won. £20 million they were paid out at that time, which is equivalent of £20 billion in today's money. That money was used to invest in the UK or reinvest in the UK. And I hear you ask, what happened to the slave then? Well, nothing. The slaves were left to their own devices. But they were free. They were free. That's what they were given. They were given their freedom. You know, and that's why, in many ways, Africans are always on the back foot when it comes to anything. We haven't got our own banks. We haven't got any sort of financial setup. We don't own land or anything. You can go to the Caribbean now, and most of the land are owned by Europeans. The Chinese, in fact, are buying up everything in Jamaica and even in Trinidad and these countries. You know, so that's why you look at where we are. We're always on the back foot. We're always playing catch up. We're like 100 years behind. I don't know what the statistics are now, but we're always behind. We're always playing catch up. You know, so it's for people to acknowledge what's happened. We're not asking for sympathy. We ask people, you must acknowledge and understand what's happened. We were never compensated for what's happened. So we've never been able to build ourselves from, we've been left to fend for ourselves in the Caribbean for all these years. You know? So it's you know, like I said, no one's asking for sympathy. No, we're just asking that for me personally, people must understand this history and it shouldn't be neglected. It has to be talked about. It has to be spoken about. They are historical facts. It's murky. It's dirty. No one wants to talk about it. Everyone feels, oh no, we shouldn't talk about that. But we should. For everyone in this country of all races, and this is what it is now. If you love it or hate it, this is what it is now. You know, we all live together as a multicultural society, and I think this makes this country great. I really do. You know, I love my white brother, I love my Indian brother, my Chinese. We all blend together, and we have to try and build this country and make it into something, keep making it into something greater than any other country on the planet, because that's what brings us together. Our differences is what brings us together. Our uniqueness is what brings us together. You know, we've all got something to bring to the table. We all need to work together and love each other as brothers and sisters, and that's what makes us great. That's what makes us Great Britain in my head. People have their own ideas of what Great Britain is. In my head, this is what our togetherness, working together, coming from different background and building this community or building this society, you know, is what makes us great. Hatred doesn't do anything. Hatred doesn't achieve anything. You know, why hate anyone else? Why hate someone else? We all bleed the same red. We're not going to be here for very long. We all have a short time on this planet. Let's try and make the best of that short time we have instead of trying to hate each other. Get everyone on a level playing field. I want to compete. I want my son to go out and apply for a job and be on the same, be on the same field or have the same, with the same credential, to have the same opportunity as my mate who's of a different skin color to me. You know, to be given the same chances, the same opportunity, not judge on the melanin on his skin. So, you know, it's really quite simple. History is important. We must learn it, but we must also be accurate with our history. Anyway, I've ranted for long enough now. I hope you guys get the point of the video. And for now, boom, I'll speak to you guys soon. Take care.